All right, then. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the No Name Podcast, powered by IAmHipHop and in collaboration with highcreativity.net. And today, whilst you're locked in with myself, J Uncle Juju St. Paul in the building, I have the one and only BJG Bazooka Joe Gotti. Give it up. Yay!
What's up, y'all? Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you so very much. Now, just for anyone who doesn't really know who BJG is, the Bazooka Joe Gotti, do you mind just giving us a little breakdown of who you are, how long you've been in the game, and the essence that's you?
Sure, yeah. I'm a hip hop cat. I grew up in hip hop. I'm from San Francisco, California, born and raised, never left. I was influenced by early hip hop music from New York. That that Boom Bap era, that hardcore hip hop shit. I used to listen to a lot of stuff from LA. I used to take a coat hanger and connect it to my radio in my room when I was a kid so I can get the frequency from K-Day, KDAY in LA, and I could listen to what's going on in LA and Hollywood. And they played mostly LA hip hop, but they played a lot of New York stuff too. So that was a big influence on me coming up, the New York scene, because I always looked at New York as the creator and the mecca, where it all began for hip hop music and culture. So, I first put out a mixtape back in like '96. And it was when people were still cracking cassette tapes and stuff like that, and I put something out in '96, and then I've been rocking ever since then. I had a little hiatus in the probably 2005 because I had surgery and it put me out for a year or two. But yeah, I've been representing hip hop for a long time. I've been studying the art form, practicing my skills. So for me, I'd say it's more about the skill set and being prepared to rock a mic wherever I'm at, in the streets, studio, nightclub, whatever, compared to accolades as far as, platinum plaques on the wall and all that stuff. So I'm a skill guy. I'm down with the skills. When I was coming up, I was kind of a little bit of a jerk because I was hard on all the other MCs because it was so competitive. I was kind of like, oh, that dude's weak, that dude's dope, that dude's weak, that dude's got skills. But I was like judging everybody. I don't do it as much nowadays. But hip hop's competitive.
This is true. So yeah, because like you mentioned, you put out your first mixtape in 1996, but before 96, as you said, you were talking about radios and coat hangers, which is something that some of our listeners ain't gonna never know the struggle of what that's about, and using metal in order to pick up the actual radio frequencies.
Right.
What was it like for you though, other than that, just giving that kind of small window into life back then? But what was like growing up in Cali, for yourself, and then your first sort of when your first hip hop song as well that said, yeah, this is me going forward.
Right. Yeah, growing up in Cali, it was always a lot of diversity. Like we have on one block of people, we have Chinese, Korean, Samoan, African American, Black brothers, white, Germans, whatever. You name the nationality, Indian, they're all on the same block. So back in the day, we all had to coexist and learn how to get along with each other. And we looked at like the similarities more than the differences, And so San Francisco growing up here was a real good place to be for me as a kid because it taught me a lot of acceptance of others, And so I always thought that everybody in the world thought the way we thought here in Cali, or at least in the Bay Area. But then when the internet really popped off and you started seeing everybody's opinions from all over the world, you realize like, wow, I was just in a little bubble. And not everybody thinks the way we think, because when I was growing up, we was a little bit more open to each other, Maybe it's a little different now because of COVID-19 and all these different things that we have to not argue about, but you know, the police brutality and the Black Lives Matter and the elections that just passed for our government here in America, and so many different things that we can argue about now. It wasn't like that when I was coming up. So I'm glad I came up when I did, because it instilled in me not to be so racial, to be more human and realize that we all human. So growing up in the Bay was really a good thing. And when it comes to music, it was so much diversity on the block of just people. So we was diverse in what music we listened to. You know, we listened to jazz, funk, sometimes some of us classical, hip hop, all different types of hip hop from New York, hip hop from LA, hip hop from Miami, you know, our own sound, you know, the Two Shorts, and it was MC Pooh and Digital Underground and people like that from the Bay Area, Tupac, you know. So we had a lot of diversity culturally and musically. So it was a good experience growing up where I'm at, San Francisco.
Oh, that's dope still. So when did you ever get into like the turntablism side of the hip hop? Because I mean, you're coming from hip hop then.
Yeah, a little bit. I did. I was DJing, you know, hip hop first hit, you know, we was all break dancing and pop locking and strutting and all this stuff, you know, because popping and strutting was pretty big on the West Coast. You know, people in New York was breaking, but people in LA was pop locking and strutting and, you know, doing a different type of dance. But we was breaking too, because we were b-boys. You know, we had the jeans with the graffiti down our legs. Like we'd have somebody that actually knew how to do graffiti good, do a piece on our jeans, right down the legs, you know. And we'd have like the nameplate belt buckle with whatever name we chose hanging down around our thigh area, you know, a leather belt, but it wouldn't be, the belt buckle wouldn't be right under your stomach. The belt buckle would be hanging down by your thigh or your lower leg, or excuse me, upper leg, so people can see the belt buckle and what it said. And usually we put our nicknames on there and stuff. And yeah, you know, when I was young, my auntie, she sent me an album. She lived in LA. She sent me an album, and it was the soundtrack to Wild Style. And ever since I got that album, I had been hooked. Man, it just lured me in and hooked me to hip hop culture. And ever since I got that album, I was studying hip hop culture and going to different events and building with different cats that were into it like I was. So we was going down to Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco, Pier 39, and battling other cats and dancing, break dancing and strutting and popping. And then eventually my crew got into turntablism, and we would DJ parties, right? And we would end up getting paid to DJ parties. And we DJ parties at my high school. I remember back in the day, they gave us like $350. Wow. And for some young kids, that's pretty good. You know, that's a lot of money. So, and we DJ'd a party at our high school, and it got us a little bit of more credibility at the school, you know, because all them dudes DJing, they got speakers and turntables and all the fly records. So yeah, we was DJing for a while. We had a crew called Frisco Fresh crew back in the day. And one of the brothers went on to DJ for a local rapper named Paris. And then another one is in Original DJs, and they still DJing to this day, and to be on big radio stations and stuff. You know, not as the lead guys, but as the backup guys. They right there, and their names are being mentioned, and they in the mix, but it wasn't their shows, but they were on the radio as part of the crew, you know. So yeah, growing up, we did a lot of turntablism. I'm a record collector. You know, I remember being on Haight Street at this place called Groove Merchants, digging in the crates. And I look to the right of me, and there's Q-Tip digging in the crates right next to me from A Tribe Called Quest. I'm like, wow, yeah, I must be at the right record store. If this brother come from New York and shops for his records here, I know I'm at the right spot, you know. So that was Groove Merchants. I remember bumping into him there. And DJ Gray Boy, he used to be kind of popular on the West Coast back in the day. He was in there one time. I was record shopping, and yeah, we've always been into digging in the crates. If we weren't DJing parties, which we did, But if we weren't DJing parties, we was digging in the crates looking for the dope breaks and samples that we could make into some beats too, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, we was DJing. The first party I ever did as an MC, my boy Mad Mike, who went on to be Paris's DJ, he DJ'd and I MC'd, and we was in Hunters Point Projects on a street called Beatrice, and that was the first time I ever did a party, you know, as an MC. So I was like the wordsmith, the MC, the host, and he was on the turntables. And we was about 16 years old up in the projects just doing our thing. The dude who threw the party, he gave us a few dollars, like 50, $100, something like that. But that kind of started us off. And so a lot of people that I grew up with are still DJing, but I went with the microphone and veered into rhyming and MCing and rapping, you know, more than any of the other elements of hip hop culture.
Right. And what was it? So, because yeah, you've just given us a wicked slice of history. So, for once again, for anyone who doesn't understand the concept of digging in the crates, what battling meant when it was actually for the fun and the love of building the culture as we know as hip hop today. So you've definitely dabbled in a lot of what builds the hip hop culture. And also, I've got to give a shout out to the fact that I didn't realize that this is like a slap on my wrist. I didn't realize that style came from you, like with the belt buckle hanging. And now that makes a lot more sense as well. So yeah, thank you very much for your contribution to the culture. So I was going to say,
we got that from New York.
Oh, okay. So all right. So okay.
And then to answer your question further about DJing, I still got my scratch pad. Like when my auntie sent me Wild Style, we used to cut the record covers up. We didn't know about eBay and all this other shit where it's gonna be worth something later on. So we would destroy shit. But this was the original cover of the Wild Style album, right? And then you cut it out and you turn it into a scratch pads and you put it on your turntable. And you put your vinyl or your wax, your record on top of it, and then that helped the record slip and slide better to where it didn't get stuck against rubber or whatever material your turntable actually came with. So yeah, I turned this album got me into hip hop so deep. And now it's still on my turntable, you know, 25 years later.
Yeah. So first of all, I know that's gonna upset a lot of people seeing it, but understand once again, like you said, there was no eBay, there was no collector's items, wasn't related to hip-hop at this particular time. However, you could arguably say that it is a collector's item in its own right. So either way, it helped you be one of the tools, one of the little cogs in your whole clock in order to make, you know, your whole thing spin. Word. So leading on to that as well, you got such a love and a passion for hip hop and deeply rooted into it. What made you say, you know what, being the wordsmith is going to be my journey rather than being the master, well, the turntablist, shall I say? Sorry.
Well, I would say I always had an affinity or a love for poetry and rhyming words. Even as a little kid, I liked to write little poems and make sure that the words rhymed and stuff. It was always a cool challenge to me to come up with something that rhymes, even as a little kid, you know. So when hip hop hit and I was introduced to hip hop, I was like, this is right up my alley because I don't really like, I like to write poetry, but I don't really like, at the time, I didn't really like rock and roll as much or, you know, whatever music was the popular music for America. I really wasn't into it as much. So I never thought about being a artist. And then hip hop came. And then I was like, you know, this is something that I can do. This is something I like. I just got to work on my rhythm and get my rhythm tight and work on my voice and projecting my voice when I speak. And I can do this. So, you know, it was a lot of artists too that got me inspired to do so. Like, you know, say Nas and Rakim and Ice Cube. Those were like three big ones for me. You know, of course, there's like 100 more I could probably name, but you know, Rakim. You know, I thought of what do you say? You thought I was a donut. You tried to glaze me. Check out my melody. You know, stuff like that had me like, wow, okay. And then Ice Cube, all his early shit that he did with the Bomb Squad in New York, and all the shit he did with NWA, and then Nas, all the Nas shit. It just opened my mind to be like, man, this poetry shit. If you can write it down good and come up with some fly, clever lines and spit it with some tenacity or some, you know, put something behind your voice, some energy, you know, you can do this. So I thank them three artists really for inspiring me and putting the fire under my ass. You know, when I was growing up, it was people like Cool G Rap. You know, Cool G Rap. That boy was busting. He was spitting. He was saying stuff that some artists nowadays may catch a heart attack trying to say. You know.
Yeah.
So I like that. And then Big Pun came out, and these brothers had such flow. It was just like, wow, mind blowing artists. You know, like superior poetry, and put to a rhythm and a beat and a melody. Man, it just really captivated me.
Yeah, even myself as well. I mean, I'm a 80s baby, a mid 80s baby, so I was kind of fortunate by the time I'm able to listen and appreciate the music. I've literally been thrown into all of that. You know, as like you said, your Rakims. I'm playing catch up effectively when you know your KRS Ones, Public Enemy, EPMD. Then,
Right,
like you said, you know, like you're saying as well, your Parks, your Biggies. So that's just as they were coming up
right.
and their short little lived game, like space in the game. Then Ice Cubes, your Dre's, Snoop Dogg. I mean, like you said, we can go on for time. And these are just the bigger hitters. We're not even talking about, you know, the underground heads who really helped bubble the whole scene, because these are the ones who were the big hitters. We forget that there's those foundations and those blocks. So
the Black Moons, the Freestyle Fellowships, the list goes on with the underground cats that were killing the game. You know, even from Group Home and you know, take it back to Main Source wasn't super underground. They were pretty known, but Main Source with Large Professor and someone digging in the crates, you know, Big L and, you know, AG and Master Ace and all these guys. They was underground and mainstream, but not really mainstream, but they was underground and super known, you know. And
yeah,
you know, then came, you know, the Jurassic Fives and the, you know, so many artists, the J Dillas and the, you know, the list goes on, man. So many people have contributed to rap music, and most people don't get the props or the respect that they deserve, you know. But it's okay though, because they know that they contributed another brick to the wall, you know, another step, you know, up the ladder for the people behind them, and that's fulfilling in itself, you know.
That's true. That's very bold. That's, as we're saying in another podcast, we're just going to give you your flowers now. So that's what we're here for. This is also what this platform's here for as well. So this is also in a way us giving our flowers to you as well, BJG, for your contribution. Because once again, you're part of the foundation of everything. So we're giving your flowers and singing your praises while you're still here, man. No, 100%. We got you. Now let's get into your 1996 mixtape, The Traps of Babylon, on which was on Rugged Legend Records. Tell us the story of that. How did that come to be?
Oh man, shoot, that's a tricky one, because I never really thought about how that came to be. Man, let me think about it now. Well, I met this brother named Leon, and he went by the name of Sonic Translator at the time, and then he changed it to Leon Freeze. And me and him started working on music, and I kind of showed him like a lot of the old breaks and how he didn't know that like some Rakim songs were samples from old joints like Ashley's Roach Clip and different old breaks. And so I played him Ashley's Roach Clip, and he was like, I can't remember right off top, but that might have been Paid in Full or one of them old classics that Rakim and Eric B had. And he's like, oh, that's blah, blah, blah. And I go, yeah, brothers are sampling, you know. And then he didn't know that, you know. He thought these brothers all had like musicians coming in or bands or something, you know. So I turned them on to the digging in the crates aspect. So me and Leon, we worked together for a while, and me and a brother named and so me and him did a song called Traps of Babylon, one of my first songs. And then I had a DJ. He was Del the Funky Homo Sapiens DJ. His name was DJ Rob
Wow.
Ski. And DJ Rob Ski, he put the cuts on Traps of Babylon. Like on that song, there's a hook, but there's also scratching that goes with the vocal hook and scratching later on in the song. And so we had some cuts on there from Rob Ski. Leon made the beat, and my boy Too Tough, I started hanging out with him around the same time, and he had more of a West Coast kind of vibe, you know. And so we did selling tapes out the crack house, and that was like on a West Coast Bay Area, LA kind of vibe, a little more funky. The Traps of Babylon one was more of a jazz break that we got from an old jazz artist called Hampton Hawes. A lot of people don't know about Hampton Hawes, but I was digging in the crates and I found that over at the Groove Merchants record shop, you know. And I was like, man, this album looks like it's gonna be dope. I didn't even know, and I grabbed it, and we got the break for Traps of Babylon off there, and we scratched the OC Times Up on there. To traps, I'm not sticking. To traps, I'm not sticking. And then you know, so that was Traps of Babylon, and then the flip side was supposed to be selling tapes out the crack house with a little more of a West Coast sound, so I cannot alienate or leave out my hometown listeners that like that flavor, you know. And then it ended up being, we added a couple more songs and just made it like an EP, you know. So it ended up being like a 4-song EP, and it's a trip because a couple of them was West Coast and a couple of them was East Coast, if you want to break down the sound of each song, you know. So I always been like that. I always try to like have a little bit of diversity on any project that I do, to where you might get a bunch of West Coast sounding beats, but you're gonna get a few hip hop cuts too that have the boom bap sound, because I don't want to leave anybody out. And it's actually like what I like. I like all of it, you know. So with that project, tapes was popping at the time. You know, people were doing tapes. Cassette tapes were still being played in people's homes and stuff, you know. So so I was like, you know, let me do a cassette tape. It's not as expensive as pressing up some wax. So I did the cassette tape, and then eventually I got some money together and I pressed up some wax for that project too. So that was a good experience. You know, I really do appreciate that experience, because I remember one time I call moms mothers, well, we call them mamaroni. Like you mix tenderoni from Bobby Brown with mama, and it's a mamaroni, you know.
Okay.
So one time Mamaroni was on an airplane coming back from LA, and she was sitting next to this Korean dude, and they just started talking. And she said, "Oh, my son, he raps. He's an MC. He got a record out, this and that." And she told him about hooking up the town, and he was like, "Wow, that's your son? I got that record. I got that." He's like, "I bought that record and I have it, and I love that record." And moms came home and told me about that experience, and that was the first time I realized, like, wow, putting out that wax was really a good move, because it got circulated around. I want to say the world, but you know, yeah, because this brother was from Korea, so it got circulated around the world. You know, I'm not trying to say that it went everywhere like a bullet and was flying off the shelves or nothing like that. But just that experience alone, I was like, wow, okay, these distributors that I'm messing with, they got my album out to Korea, you know. And this brother heard of me, and I started getting phone calls from people in Japan. So it was really hitting Asia. And you know, people in Asia, people in Europe, they tune in to what American music people are doing. You know, they checking for it. You know, I don't know if it's so much like that now, but it definitely was for a lot of years. Even in Germany, you know, and France and England and Italy and all them places in Europe, you know, it's like for a long time when Boom Bap died out in America, they kind of kept it lit for us. And then Boom Bap made a resurgence here. But that's because Europe kept boom bap alive. They was rocking that shit way after everybody out here went to a different genre of rap music. They went to West Coast gangster shit, or they went to, uh, whatever the sound was from different regions, Miami, Detroit. But really, I'm saying like trap music. Everybody started getting into trap music and shit like that. But in Europe, they might have got into that too a little bit, but they never let go of that original hip hop sound, which is a good thing because it's made a resurgence in America now with artists like West Side Gun and
Yep.
Benny the Butcher and Conway the Machine and that whole little Griselda clique. And there's many cliques like that in America, but they're the ones that got signed to Eminem, so you hear about them a little more. But there's a lot of cliques that still represent underground hip hop. Like my last two albums have been solely dedicated to boom bap hip hop. There ain't too much singing on the hooks, and ain't too much it's hardcore. It could be gangster shit, but it ain't like the LA sound. It ain't like the funk, the LA funk gangster shit, but it's dedicated more to like the essence of everything, the mother of this shit, which was the hard drums, the boom bap sound, where the drums were kind of like really like the most important. And then your sample and your loop was important also. But my last two albums, Lyrical Supernova and Street Disciple, were pretty much planned out that way to be like, man, you know what? These next two projects, I'm gonna go to what I really know the best, what I think I'm really good at, and what got me into hip hop from the beginning. So it's like going back to the essence, because I want anybody that checks for my music to know, okay, this dude, he's from the hip hop era. He's from the original hip hop cloth, the culture where it wasn't a lot of trendy shit going on. It wasn't just a fad. People thought it might have been a fad and it was going to die out, but little did they know it was going to take over the world and be on every commercial. You hear a hip hop drum beat, you hear old, break beat on everything you hear, even I hate to say it, dog, but even country music sometimes.
Yep.
I'll be flipping the channels and I hear the country station. I'm like, wow, that sounds like the hip hop break beat or drum beat behind it, and it's like, hip hop has done wonders, man. It's all over the world. So with the last two albums, I wanted to express my love and gratitude for hip hop culture.
Definitely comes across on them as well, especially whilst listening through to them both, because you also did, you've definitely stayed, other than your hiatus, as you mentioned, you've definitely stayed consistent. You've dropped many albums and mixtapes, and even through this whole pandemic, whatever you want, whatever one of people call it. We're trying to be a people pleaser, but just trying to call a spade, I suppose. But touching on to what you're saying about us keeping here on this side of the pond, keeping Boom Bap alive, and with the distro, it's interesting because most people wouldn't know, especially in today's age, what that's like to be international without the use of the internet and having people actually physically picking up your material from, as you said, like digging the crates or knowing what you're looking for. Us here, because we were always so thirsty for hip hop, and it was always hard to, the only things that we knew with hip hop, I suppose the best way to put it was what was put in front of us. So we only had the box, or we had like Westwood on Radio 1 or Choice FM or Kiss FM back when they were more pirate based radio stations. And that was the only time that you'd really get hip hop in its purest form. Otherwise, you would have to do something similar. You'd have to go and dig in a crate. So we had Tower Records here for a bit. We had an Owl Price. We had HMV, then Virgin Megastores. And these were places that you would go to try and find that sound that you're looking for, because depending on which area you went, depended on what music you would get, because as a business, that's you tailor to your local audience. But Central always seemed to have the most of the most. But for us, even now, I covered in an article with a documentary about how global hip hop is, and things like graffiti and how influential that is in Greece at the moment for politics. And then people using b-boying for kids in Cambodia to put them into b-boying classes and such, to take them off the streets and try to show them a different way. So for us globally, hip-hop's been as it was even when it was born, and the influence it had in the States, it saved a lot of people. Okay, yes, as we know, as things have gone on, it's taken its fair share as well, but you know, the commercialism, and without getting too gritty about it, but without getting too lost, for us here, especially for me, I always loved the boom bap sound. For me, it was just because I come from a household that I was grew up on funk, jazz. Yeah, we did have, I mean, Top of the Pops we had, which is, you know, our thing here in Europe. And so I did like my rock and, you know, your Guns N' Roses, you know, like Sabbath and those types of bands as well, but really was grown predominantly on old school soul, R&B, funk, and just all that, you know, just that old groove kind of feel especially from my dad. Then my uncle was the one who got me into hip hop, because he was getting into DJing and wanted to be an MC himself over here. So then all of a sudden these worlds collided. Now, as things went on, yes, the sounds have changed and hip hop's evolved into this plethora of different sounds. Like you've had your Linkin Parks and, you know, even your Limp Bizkits and such. So it all kind of, some cross genres are always going to take into effect. But for us, man, we just can't get it. I personally, for me, I still can't get enough of the boom, because for me, it just does that warm kind of feel to it. You know, there's dedication and love put into it. So all I can do, once again, is just saying thank you guys for just keeping it alive, because that's what, you know, most of us done. Now you're saying you're right, because now the UK wanted to separate itself from being state space as it was, because we started to feel over here we're not going to make it over there, because we've had artists who have tried but they can't break the states. So that really encouraged the garage scene, and then the grime scene, and then the UKM scene, and that's where we developed our own style and the own way of doing hip-hop effectively, but just in our own way. However, you go underground, so to the shout out to Global Faction, shout out to, you know, Apex and the gang, and to just even the heads that I know that are literally still on that raw hip hop sound. So sorry, that's just my little history lesson, I suppose.
El Roney is the diversifier. That's one of my boys. He been doing the same sound for the whole time and never veered left or right. Straight old school, real hip hop shit, you know, and I respect that.
For real.
Boy, El Roney. And then